I died a year ago. That's why no one responds to my words. Today, a neighbor gave us some oranges. Do you want to eat some? These oranges are really good, from Florida. I'll leave them in the kitchen, so eat them if you feel like it. Well, I'm going to bed now. Good night. It feels like I'm no longer in this world, and my words can't be heard. Their responses are so absent that I might as well be talking to myself. For about a year now, we've had this one-sided communication. I live with my eldest son and his wife, but at some point, they stopped responding to me. Being ignored like this repeatedly is worse than being told, shut up, or don't talk to me. Yet, when they want to dump chores on me, like a make meal or a clean up, they throw these demands at me, making it even more unbearable. Yes, it's terrible, but even those disdainful words sometimes make me happy because I've been ignored for so long. Then, I realize how pathetic I am, feel sad, and get hurt over and over again. I don't expect them to remember that I gave birth to them, but is this how you treat your parent? Especially my daughter-in-law, who, even though she's family, is ultimately an outsider. Is it right for an adult to ignore and torment someone else? If I've done something wrong, I want them to tell me. If not, I want to know why they are ignoring me. In my old age, with my abilities and range of activities limited, these two occupy most of my world. So, being treated like an invisible person or a pest is incredibly painful. Someone, please understand. And help me. My name is Nancy, and I am a retired housewife. I was married to my husband, Mike, for over 40 years, but he recently passed away surrounded by family. The cause of his death was colon cancer. A few months ago, he got a health checkup that indicated he needed further tests, and that's when we found out about the cancer. At first, they said it was treatable, but the cancer spread faster than the doctors expected, and his condition worsened rapidly, leading to his death in about 6 months. The silver lining was that Mike was not alone. Our eldest son and his wife, as well as our youngest son, were there. When we were informed about Mike's cancer, Dr. Smith told us, even if this cancer is treated, due to his age, it's uncertain how many more years he will have. I've heard that the first 5 years after cancer treatment are crucial. So, I wanted to ensure that even if something happened to Mike, he would at least have a fulfilling life, so I gathered my sons. I suggested to my eldest son and his wife that they live with us, and asked my youngest son if he could move back home. While my eldest son, John, was hesitant, his wife, Laura, readily agreed, saying, "Of course, we'll live together." So, the decision was made quickly. However, my younger son Tom, due to his job, found it difficult to move, so he couldn't live with us. Even so, he made time to visit and check on my husband Mike whenever he could. With these arrangements, Mike passed away surrounded by his family. The time Mike, John, Laura, and occasionally Tom spent together was the most fulfilling and enjoyable period in recent years. So no one expected it to end in just 6 months. After Mike's funeral, a few days later, I asked John and Laura if they wanted to continue living together. Originally, it was for Mike's sake, and it felt unfair to continue living together out of convenience. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't lonely, but I didn't want John and Laura to think I used Mike's illness as an excuse to have them take care of me. Sure, there might come a time when I need someone to take care of me, but for now, I think I'm still okay. Therefore, if John and Laura had said, "We want to stop living together," I was ready to accept that. However, Laura said, "No, we don't need to stop living together." It might sound rude to say it was unexpected, but it was a relief for me, who had prepared for the worst. "Thank you, I appreciate it." Laura kindly replied, "You're welcome." Yes, she replied kindly. A few months after Mike passed away, I was still unable to shake off the sadness of losing my husband. But I thought that if I continued to get along with my son and daughter-in-law as before, I would eventually recover. However, something unexpected happened. It seemed that my relationship with my son and his wife, Laura, had deteriorated. That being said, it's not like I've done anything to upset them. Or rather, I don't remember doing anything that would have upset them. Whenever I spoke to John and Laura, they would frown and respond as if they were annoyed. It was clear that they found me bothersome. If I had done something wrong, I wanted to apologize and mend the relationship immediately. However, apologizing without knowing what they were upset about seemed even more insulting, so I decided to ask them directly. John, have I done something to upset you? You and Laura seem so unhappy lately. If I did something wrong, please tell me. I'll be careful. As I asked, I noticed that deep furrows were etched between John's brows. Despite his obvious displeasure, he said, nothing. I asked Laura the same question. She also responded, nothing in particular. But despite their words, they continued to respond irritably when I spoke to them and eventually started ignoring me altogether. Today, a neighbor gave us some oranges. Do you want some? Even when I spoke to them in the living room, they didn't even look at the oranges. They stared at the TV as if waiting for me to leave. These oranges are from Florida. I'll leave them in the kitchen, so eat them if you want. No response again. Well, I'm going to bed now. Good night. It was always one-sided communication. In fact, they didn't even want to touch anything I brought. The oranges I left for John and Laura remained untouched and eventually grew moldy. Being ignored like this repeatedly is worse than being told, shut up, or don't talk to me. Even teenagers would react at least that much. But John and Laura are over 30. This isn't something grown adults should do. Yet, when they want to dump chores on me, like a make meal or to clean up, they throw these demands at me, making it even more unbearable. This kind of behavior from my son and his wife isn't normal. But then again, I realized that I too had become not quite normal. Because they ignored me so much, I sometimes felt happy even when they just bossed me around. When I realized this, I was devastated by my own pathetic state. One day, after about a year of this, John spoke to me about something other than chores. Mom, starting tomorrow, move to the guest house. I couldn't understand his sudden words. It's true, our house has a guest house. Originally intended for visitors, it has all the necessary facilities for living. However, it had become a storage space with no one staying there for a long time. I had planned to clean it up someday, but the sheer amount of stuff had made me put it off. So, moving there immediately was difficult. And besides, why do I have to move to the guest house? At least tell me the reason. When I asked this, John, with his usual frown, replied irritably. Do I really have to explain that just because you're my mom? You do need to explain. After all, you're trying to change my life suddenly. This isn't the same as not telling me why you didn't eat the oranges I brought. Of course. I won't move unless you give me a reason. At this, John clicked his tongue in annoyance, was silent for a while, then suddenly seemed to think of something and started speaking. It's that, you know. Laura and I are thinking about having kids soon. It would be awkward if you were in the main house. Or do you have some kind of hobby of spying on us? Of course, I have no such distasteful hobby. But if that's the reason, it makes some sense. Though it did seem like he was grasping for an excuse. All right. But it's not going to be immediate. You know that the guest house is now a storage area. It will take at least a few days to clean it up. When I pointed this out, John became even more irritated. He grabbed my arm roughly and dragged me to the entrance. Despite my sudden stumble and complaints about the pain where he grabbed me, John ignored me and kept dragging me until we reached the front of the annex. I don't care about cleaning up. You can do that while living there. I want to start trying for kids immediately. Got it? So, from today, live here and don't come to the main house. With that, John shoved me into the guest house and went back to the main house. From that day on, I had no choice but to live in the guest house. I wanted to complain to John about how he was treating me. But maybe he's just stressed about the future. And it seemed that Laura was also stressed. One day, to make my life in the guest house more comfortable, I went to the main house to get some things. When I tried to enter through the front door, it wouldn't open. So I inserted my key to unlock it. However, while the key fit into the lock, it wouldn't turn at all. It turned out that John and Laura had changed the front door lock without telling me. They really didn't want me in the main house. But since I needed some things, I knocked on the door and windows to get their attention. Hearing the noise, Laura came to the door, looking very annoyed. So I apologized, saying, "I'm sorry," and asked Laura to get my things. Without a word, Laura threw my belongings at me and slammed the window shut. It hurt me deeply, but I told myself it was just because they were stressed until the baby came. That can't be just excused away. Tom, who had come to check on me, couldn't help but raise his voice after hearing my story. That day, Tom had come to see how I was doing. Since my husband Mike passed away, he was worried about me living with John and Laura, wondering if I was doing well. However, before even asking about my well-being, Tom saw that I had moved to the annex, which was still in the middle of being cleaned up. And he asked what had happened. That jerk. How could he treat you like this? I'll go talk to him. Tom stood up to head to the main house, but I grabbed his arm and stopped him. It's fine, I said to him. I'm sure it's just for now. Once the baby is here, they'll rely on me. The first child is always hard. Besides, if we upset them, they might say I can't see my grandchild, and that would be even worse. Even if they treated me poorly, the thought of seeing my grandchild kept me going. That is... Tom started to say something but fell silent. That might have been a mistake. Since Tom is single, my words might have sounded like I was blaming him for not being married. Anne. I understand. I'll stay out of it for now. But if you need anything, let me know, Tom said, stepping out into the garden. As Tom was about to leave, John came out of the main house and their eyes met. Tom glared at John, but John just smirked back at him with a nasty grin. Hey, Tom. How's it going overseas? Enjoying yourself? I bet the size difference between American and foreigners is shocking, huh? Just thinking about it makes me sick. Get lost, freak. John, stop it. Even when I yelled, John didn't stop smirking. Tom seemed like he wanted to say something back, but seeing my face, he remembered to stay out of it and left without a word. John, noticing Tom's visit, seemed to have come out just to tease him and then went back to the main house. This whole interaction made it clear, my eldest son John and my younger son Tom did not get along. John had always been average in academics and sports, without any standout qualities. In contrast, Tom was naturally adept and curious, excelling in both studies and athletics. Since there was only a 1-year age difference between John and Tom, John resented being outdone by his younger brother and stopped talking to him when they entered their teenage years. Tom, wanting to mend their relationship, thought sharing a secret might make John more trusting. So, he confided in John that he was gay. But instead of drawing closer, John rejected Tom and even spread the news to our family and neighbors. Eventually, a decisive rift formed between John and Tom. Furthermore, while I didn't mind if my child was gay as long as they were healthy and happy, at that time, Mike couldn't accept Tom for who he was. Feeling uncomfortable in his own home and country, Tom left for abroad after graduating college. Years later, after Mike was diagnosed with cancer, he had a change of heart and left an apology and a message of a live freely in his will, which helped Tom forgive him. However, the rift between John and Tom remained. I was once again made acutely aware of just how troubled my family truly was. However, realizing the family's issues didn't mean anything would change. No matter how much I wanted to resolve the issues, it was useless if John and Laura weren't willing to cooperate. It felt like I was fighting a losing battle. Still, I wanted to talk things over with John and Laura, but I couldn't even enter the main house. So, that day I decided to stay alert, listening and watching for the moment when John or Laura would leave, so I could try to talk to them. As luck would have it, John and Laura came out of the main house together, getting ready to go somewhere. I approached them to talk, but they brushed me off and refused to listen. All I could do was watch as their car drove away. With John and Laura gone, there was nothing I could do. I decided to pull myself together and watch some TV in the guest house. Just as I thought that, I heard a groaning sound from the main house. At first, I thought it was my imagination. Or perhaps the stress was causing me to hear things. But then I heard it again, a distinct. Worried it might be a burglar, I approached the main house, hiding among the garden plants. Peering through the window, I saw an unbelievable sight. An elderly man lay on a hospital bed, with a woman about my age by his side. Seeing this scene, I thought I might have been looking into the wrong house. I wondered if I had unconsciously wandered into a neighbor's house. But the exterior of the main house was unmistakably my own home. When I looked through the window again, I indeed saw the elderly people, and the woman even made eye contact with me. At that moment, I finally remembered who she was. The woman recognized me too, exclaiming, and heading to the entrance to unlock the door. "Hello, Nancy. It's been a while." She smiled at me as she said this. I replied, "How have you been?" This woman was Mary, Laura's mother. That meant the man on the bed was Laura's father. Even though I now knew who the elderly people were, I still couldn't understand the situation. So I entered the main house to hear the story from Mary. "I truly owe you thanks, Nancy. I'm sorry for the trouble my selfishness has caused. Thank you for taking care of my husband who needs constant care," Mary said, bowing deeply. I didn't know anything about Mary's situation or that Laura's father was staying here, but to keep the conversation smooth, I just responded, "It's nothing." According to Mary, Laura's father had severe dementia and required full-time care. However, when he became completely bedridden, it became physically impossible for Mary to take care of him. But Mary was resistant to the idea of placing him in a facility to spend his final days. So she consulted with Laura to see if there was another solution. Then Laura suggested, "We can take care of him at John's parents' house," and so Laura's father came to my house. When Mary visited Laura's father, she found me locked out and quickly let me into the main house. I see. I'm starting to get the picture. John forced me into the annex because it was already decided that Laura's father would be coming to the house. While I was pondering this, Mary spoke up. "But I didn't expect to see you here, Nancy. I mean, I know it's not my place to say since you're taking care of my husband. But John told me you were in a facility." "What?" So, I was no longer even considered a resident of this house? As I tried to explain, saying, "That's not true," I suddenly heard a shout. "Hey, Nancy. Why are you in the main house?" There stood Laura and John, just returning from an outing. Before I could confront them about having more pressing matters to discuss, Mary yelled back, "How dare you talk to her like that? Apologize to Nancy right now." Laura, realizing her mother saw how she treated me, looked as if she had swallowed something bitter. Good. If Mary continues to lecture Laura, it might change how she treats me in the future. While I was watching this unfold, hoping it might restore my standing, the situation took an unexpected turn. "What? Just because you're my mother, do you think you can talk to me like that? You do know who's keeping Dad out of a facility, right? I'm fine with putting him in one immediately if you don't stop meddling in our relationship." Mary stammered, trying to argue back, but no further words came out. It seems she was very resistant to placing her husband in a facility. Such an evil couple. Their actions are truly despicable. Feeling sorry for Mary, I said, "I don't mind. Laura's father can stay here as long as needed." Mary bowed to me repeatedly, saying, "Thank you." After Mary left, it goes without saying that I was harshly scolded by Laura and John for coming to the main house without permission. This incident triggered the full onset of John and Laura's efforts to push me out. One day, while I was sleeping in the annex, Laura forcibly woke me up, shouting, "Wake up." As I wondered what was going on, I followed Laura outside to find John, some strangers, and a van labeled Sunshine Retirement Home waiting. At this point, I understood the situation. John and Laura had arranged to put me in a retirement home without my consent. Today's visit was a trial stay. But they underestimated me. I thought if I explained the truth to the staff, John and Laura would be the ones in trouble. So I resisted, saying, "They are doing this without my consent. I have no intention of going." However, the staff ignored my words, reassuring me, "It's okay," as they tried to put me in the van. Why? Are they in cahoots with John and Laura too? Then John, with a wry smile, told the staff, "Sorry for the trouble, my mom has dementia." Unbelievable, I was the naive one. Realizing I had no other choice, I reluctantly agreed to the 3-day trial stay. When I returned home, the annex was filled with John and Laura's unwanted belongings. They were implicitly telling me to hurry up and move to the facility. This was the final straw. I know some of you might think it's about time, but I wanted to see my grandchildren and didn't want to leave the home where I grew up. But I have no choice. In the end, what truly matters is not where you live. It's who you live with. A few days later, I told John and Laura, I've decided to move into the retirement home, and left the house. John and Laura clasped their hands together in joy. Sure, I'm sure you're thrilled to be rid of me. If you want to keep living like this, you'd better make sure Laura's father lives a long life. A few months later, I received a call from Mary, informing me that Laura's father had passed away. Tom and I traveled back to our hometown to attend Laura's father's funeral. The service was held at a funeral home, so I took the bus to the venue. Of course, John and Laura were there too. In John's arms was an unfamiliar baby. I didn't need to ask, I already knew. That child was born to John and Laura. In other words, my grandchild. So, they didn't even tell me about the birth of my grandchild. Well, now I was resolved. The funeral went smoothly, and I took a brief tour around my hometown before returning to my current home a few days later. And then, a few days later, I received a sudden call from John. What do you mean, get out of the house? Where to begin explaining? First of all, the reason John had to leave the house wasn't anything complicated. I had sold the house. But with people still inside, the real estate agent likely had to forcibly evict them. What? How could you sell that house, Mom? Wasn't it Dad's house? Excuse me? I never said that. And anyway, who do you think inherited the house after Dad passed away? John struggled to answer such an obvious question. Then Laura, who had been listening next to him, chimed in. It was in limbo. John needed Tom's approval to inherit it, so it was postponed. What you did was embezzlement. How horrible. They talk about me as if I'm a criminal. Where did they get the confidence that John would definitely inherit the house? That house was never in Mike's name, it was always under my father's name. Hearing this, Laura, half crazed, shouted, So, we can't live in a house anymore. With that loud voice, I understood. John and Laura wanted to live in a house but didn't have the money, so they moved in with me and Mike to take over our home. That explains their behavior towards me. Wait, there's still something odd. John said, as if remembering something. This was getting tiresome. How much longer did I have to listen to their futile arguments? I hadn't done anything illegal or wrong, so nothing they said would change anything. Honestly, I wanted to hang up immediately. But perhaps listening to it all was my final duty as a parent. So, I patiently listened to John's words. Then what about the property taxes, fire insurance, and other monthly expenses? You're not working, and you're not old enough to receive a pension. You don't have that much savings, so were you skipping payments? This couple was determined to make me the villain. Then, my phone suddenly moved away from my ear. If Mom hadn't paid, would you have covered it, John? Huh? Tom? Why are you there? When did you come back? Actually, Tom had been listening to John and Laura's tirade the entire time. I'm in Japan, in my own house. Right now, I'm living with Mom and my partner. But Mom was in a nursing home. Foolish. After treating me so poorly, they easily believed my words. Do they think that parents won't retaliate against their own children? Yes, unlike you, Tom invited me to live with him. Not only that, he covered the property taxes, fire insurance, Mike's medical expenses, and even the funeral costs. Honestly, it feels a bit pathetic to rely on my child so much, but Tom says it's just pocket change for him. Next to me, Tom provoked John further, saying, Yeah, this is just basic filial duty. John, easily falling for the provocation, shouted on the phone, Shut up. And anyway, letting a gay guy support you is crazy. They can't even have kids, they're a blight on human progress. They might as well be dead. What on earth is this worthless son saying at this point? As I was about to yell at him, Tom calmly said, Oh, really? That's your freedom to think that. Do as you like. By the way, I heard you had a baby. Congratulations. I heard it's a boy. I'm looking forward to his growth. When he grows up, makes friends, and falls in love, what will you say if he brings home a boyfriend? Will you tell him you might as well be dead? Silence fell. The air froze. No way. My son would never. There's no never. You don't know that. He might develop those feelings later. He's still a baby full of possibilities. Nothing is certain. So, tell me, would you tell your son to Aita then? John couldn't respond. In the end, John proved to be a small-minded person who couldn't understand, deny, or accept values different from his own. Well, you have until your child grows up to come up with an answer. What we know now is that a wealthy gay man and his mother can lead a much better life than a foolish man and his family kicked out of their house. Having always been insecure about Tom's superiority, John was completely broken by these words and could only sob. I always tried to love John and Tom equally. It didn't matter if they had bad grades or were gay. They were my children, and I loved them for that. But John, when did you become such an unlovable person? Maybe you always were. It seems your downfall wasn't in academics or sports but in your humanity. With that, I hung up the phone. A postscript. John and his family are now living in a cheap apartment, feeling cramped. Laura had apparently demanded her father's entire inheritance in exchange for taking care of him, which allowed them to rent the apartment. However, most of Laura's father's inheritance was spent on caregiving, leaving them with little after paying the deposit and key money. Moreover, Mary, knowing how Laura treated me, cut ties with her when she received the inheritance, leaving her without financial support. By the way, it was me who told Mary about Laura's mistreatment. She easily believed me after witnessing Laura's behavior in my house. Some might think it's cruel to make the baby suffer, but I believe raising your own child is a basic responsibility. And the parents are healthy and financially capable. It's just that they had been living too freely until now. As for me, I still live with Tom, and we often have meals together with his foreign partner. Recently, I've even been able to understand daily conversations in Japanese, making every day exciting and enjoyable. I hope to live a long life to continue enjoying this kind of life.